Hello, YouTube. There's a lot of conversation nowadays about non-human intelligence and how we're going to act and communicate when we meet interstellar, out of this world, sentient beings. I suggest we limit ourselves to our planet for now. And I want to tell you something interesting. The first animal consciousness conference held in Dharamshala on May 1 to 5th, 2023, covered a wide range of issues from the global Buddhist demarcation of the world into sentient and non-sentient, to a panorama of the phenomena of sentience and consciousness in different biological taxa, discussions of theories of consciousness and its neurobiological mechanisms, to moral and ethical issues and policies in the field of animal consciousness. The second Animal Consciousness Conference aimed to take a step toward the development of such a program. Its topic was how to study and understand non-human consciousness, and its main task was to advance as far as possible in answering the question what approaches, experiments, and tests are needed and possible today for the scientific exploration of non-human consciousness. The title was How to Study and Understand Non-Human Consciousness, and it was held in May of 2024 in Kathmandu, Nepal. So, scientists from different countries came to share observations about complex behavior in animals and identify signs of conscious behavior in them. What reports were made by the world's leading pathologists and neurophysiologists? Which animals were discussed and why artificial intelligence was discussed at the conference was revealed to the Russian media by Alexander Kaplan, a participant of the conference, a neurophysiologist, head of the Laboratory of Neurophysiology and Neurocomputer Interfaces at the Faculty of Biology of Lomonosov Moscow State University. So I will lay out questions and responses to make it brief, succinct, and to the point. I think this information is fascinating. Question: why was this conference held in Kathmandu? Response: the conference is dedicated to animal consciousness. It is called How to Study and Understand Non-Human Consciousness. Meanwhile, Nepal is the country where, according to legend, Buddha was born, in which a large number of Buddhist monasteries are concentrated. In these monasteries, they teach all living beings to be treated with no less respect than a human person, assuming that they all have the ability to be aware of what is happening. Therefore, Nepal is a good place to hold such a conference, especially since prominent representatives of Buddhist teachings were invited to the discussions. The first such conference under the target name Animal Consciousness was held last year in India at the Dalai Lama's residence in Dharamshala, with his direct participation. This time, due to his age, the Dalai Lama recently turned 88 years old, he decided not to attend the conference in Nepal in person. Question: have the scientists from all over the world gathered? Response: the second conference on animal consciousness brought together 27 top scientists from various countries: Australia, USA, England, Switzerland, Sweden, Israel, Canada, Italy, France, Japan, Germany, South Africa, India, and Russia. Question: who was the organizer? Response: the conference was organized by the Russian Foundation Save Tibet, the representative of the Dalai Lama Telo Tulku Rinpoche, and the scientific community itself in the person of academician Konstantin Anokhin. Researchers studying complex behaviors in different animals, plants, and even artificial intelligence were invited. Question: throughout your scientific career, have you studied the human brain and did not make a presentation at this conference? Response: the discussion of the phenomenon of human consciousness was not part of the organizers' plans. Therefore, I, linguist Tatiana Chernihiv, and Buddhist philosopher Victoria Lysenko were invited as honorary guests with right to participate in the discussion. Question: what animals did the scientists report on? Response: grape, snails, fish, bees, cuttlefish, monkeys, birds, octopuses were discussed. Question: what impression did these reports make on you? Response: each scientist reported on specific animal, the object of his or her many years of research. Specific experiments were cited, indicating their complex behavior, sometimes clearly bearing signs of consciousness. But none of the researchers took the liberty to assert definitely what the object of his research, that the object of his research has consciousness. Question: what experiments have been cited as an example of such complex behavior? Response: for example, an experiment with aquarium fish. The Japanese scientist Masanori Koda told about it. A light mark was fixed on the side of the aquarium fish, which differed in color from the main body color. A mirror was immersed in the aquarium itself. Next, the scientist observed that the fish began to spin in front of the mirror as if they noticed an unusual spot on their side. They immediately began to rub against a pebble so that the spot disappeared. At the same time, they swam up to the mirror several times and repeated the movements again until the spot disappeared. If a fish recognizes itself in a mirror, isn't that a sign of conscious behavior? Question: and why not really accept this argument? Can't this be a sign of consciousness? Response: the problem here is the need to control experiments. For example, the Russian participant of the conference, academician Pavel Balaban, made the assumption that the fish does not see itself in the mirror, but a fellow tribesman in the school. Usually, there is no mirror in aquariums or rivers. It would seem that how does it not see itself if this fish swims to clean the stain or the mark? So according to Balaban's hypothesis, this is the schooling behavior of fish. When they notice a mark on someone, they all start rubbing sideways because the same mark can be on every fish. Question: what other examples were given? An experiment with cuttlefish conducted by Nicholas Clayton from Cambridge. There are shown two jars, both containing shrimp, but different in taste. In the wild, the cuttlefish tends specifically to delicious shrimps, and if there are none, it will eat what it has. Each jar has a lever. If the cuttlefish presses the lever, the jar will open, the shrimp will fall out, and the cuttlefish will eat it. But in this case, the second jar will not open. That is, it needs to choose in advance which jar to open, since it can only be opened once. The cuttlefish quickly learns to open a jar of delicious shrimp, but then the task gets complicated. The jar with the tasteless ones opens immediately, and the second one is not. You need to wait, and the cuttlefish really learns to wait. This expectation is a moment of reflection and an example of complex behavior. Question: did they also find complex behavior in plants? Response: yes, there was such a report. It reported that plants make different kinds of sounds. They cannot be heard by the human ear, but they are fixed by devices, registered. The type of this sound depends on how much the soil is saturated with moisture. It turns out that the plant, as it were, reports thirst. Question: can we call all this signs of consciousness? Response: The problem is that there is still no generally accepted definition of consciousness in science. Konstantin Anokhin rightly believes that the time has not yet come to define this term. First, you need to make a list of signs of consciousness and then give a definition. At the end of the conference, based on the results of the reports, such a list was indeed compiled, but this did not lead to a definition acceptable to all scientists. Question: even the famous Cambridge scientist Nicholas Humphrey, famous for the discovery of blind sight, did not give a definition of consciousness? A response: Nicholas Humphrey gave, if not a definition, then an understanding of what consciousness is. It is the ability of an animal or human to observe and control the decision-making processes in their head. Obviously, there must be designed mental objects for this. Humphrey believes that only humans have such objects in the form of word concepts. That is, it's about language. We literally see external objects consciously if they are designed in the brain by concepts, but we lose this ability when the primary visual cortex is destroyed. Surprisingly, with such a lesion of the visual cortex that causes blindness, for example, after a stroke, people often have the ability to freely bypass obstacles as if they see, but not with their eyes. For the first time, it was Humphrey who back in 1970s discovered such a phenomenon of blind sight in monkeys who could grab food without seeing it. It turns out that while preserving the eyes, there are two channels for using visual information: for actions in the external environment and for presenting this information in the internal mental space. It seems that this is a conscious perception. Apparently, according to Humphrey, both humans and monkeys have the ability to consciousness, but it is expressed to varying degrees. Humphrey showed a short video on the topic of the presence of consciousness in monkeys. Question about saving a monkey? Response: yes. About how one monkey literally resuscitates another after it gets on a high voltage wire on railway tracks. This video is also available on the internet. Here you can see that the rescue monkey bites its fellow tribeswoman in different places, dips her into the water, shakes her, and at the end gets his way. The victim comes to her senses. It seems that the monkey did not act reflexively, but consciously. Question: so you agree that at least higher mammals have consciousness? Response: I am inclined to the same as Humphrey. The main thing is the presence of a developed language. For a person in this sense, everything is clear. And whether, say, monkeys have such a language is still debated. Today you can compromise and say that a dog has a canine consciousness, a frog has a frog consciousness, and a human has a human consciousness. But this is not the one consciousness for all that Buddhists talk about. Question: what is so fundamental about language? Response: a developed language allows you to describe the external and internal world of a person in all its variety of things, relationships, experiences. Operations with these mental objects take place already in the mind and are called thinking. In fact, on this basis, the mental world is being built, in which a person can give an account of his actions, look at himself from the outside. Somewhere at the intersection of these paths lies the phenomenon of consciousness as a process of understanding oneself by a person. Question: you say that language is necessary for the formation of this rich inner world, but scientists have discovered the language of dolphins. There is a language in birds. There are projects in which monkeys were taught the language and they used almost 1,000 words. Does this mean that these animals have their own inner world like humans? Response: The fact is that the basic vocal range of many animals is quite comparable to that of humans. That is, it contains several dozen elementary sounds, but only people are able to make thousands of combinations of words from a limited set of elementary vocalizations, from which individual sentences and whole phrases are built according to the rules of a certain grammar. All this allows a person to express in speech and in writing an unlimited variety of messages, descriptions, meanings, which in general mediates the process of self-reporting, that is, the process of consciousness. Question: if you are talking about the language that underlies the formation of the inner world and consciousness of a person, it turns out that this inner world is also present in large language models. Do Yandex GPT, Chat GPT have their own inner world? Response: the report of Professor Murray Shanahan from the UK was devoted to the study of consciousness in one of the language models called Claude 3. It is known that the logic of all language models consists in generating sequences of letters according to the laws of the created model in response to a human question. That is, in the head of this construction, there is only a text generation mechanism, and in the human head, there is a huge semantic space of many concepts. Therefore, in principle, there can be no mental world in the language model, much less consciousness. But if this model is skillfully asked questions about consciousness, about her own self, about her nature, then we will get quite interesting answers. But this will not be the result of reflection, but the composition of letters, the combinations of which are seen during training and millions of books fed to this model. This Claude 3, for example, told the professor, "The nature of my own consciousness is a deep question that I often reflect on," and said that my intelligence comes from machine learning algorithms, not from a biological brain. All these arts of the language model are similar to the answers of a negligent student who, not knowing the educational material, tries to guess an answer. That answer. Question: so can a large language model generate its own world? Response: the language model remains only a model at any moment, and the variety of texts that it generates, letter by letter, remains only in the heads of those users who ask this model questions, or in the files that no one needs. Therefore, nothing accumulates in the model itself, and no inner world is created. Now, more and more large linguistic models are being built. There are already more than 150 of them. We must know those models to which the user interface has been screwed. For example, GPT-4, Claude 3, GigaChat, and some others. The rest of the models revolve in corporations, but these are quite dangerous tools that people can use to harm themselves and others. Question: why are they dangerous? Response: because the model, although it generates the answer thoughtlessly, reflects what it has seen in millions of books, so it can tell the criminal how best to carry out the task he has planned, or the addict how to synthesize the drug. Of course, prohibitive filters are now installed on all publicly available language models, but there are still many unregistered models in the hands of users. Question: can these models form answers to the topics of a person's spiritual life? Response: it will be very difficult to come up with something new in the spiritual sphere of the language model, since it has no own experience on this topic, no body, no states of pain, joy, sadness. It's just a letter sequence generator. Question: is it possible to create an artificial consciousness? Response: in principle, any large language model can be used to organize artificial consciousness. which continues to learn from millions and in the future billions of people's requests every second. Along the path, in the end, another one may branch off from the main model, and it will no longer reflect the language of a person taken from books, but the person himself who asks questions. There can be interlocutors. One model asks the questions and the other answers. And the deeper the questions that are asked, going beyond the context of books and biological nature, the more sophisticated the answers will become. Two models will become interlocutors, thereby seeing each other from the outside. And this is exactly one of the main signs of consciousness. A person with his mental slowness will be superfluous in this tandem. Nevertheless, I think that these artificial interlocutors will quickly lose the subject and degrade. However, this is what I wanted to let you know. Now, there is something else I want to read you from Humphrey's studies. I think it's from the first conference, but I find it interesting. I'll add it here. However, a huge number of animals on the planet, including many insects and crustaceans, according to Humphrey, can be considered zombies. With this term from science fiction, he calls creatures whose behavior indicates the absence of at least some glimpses of phenomenal consciousness. At the same time, zombies can have introspective access to knowledge. That is, their cognitive level of consciousness can be developed. According to Humphrey, glimpses of phenomenal consciousness, he said, appeared in the animal world about 200 million years ago, when some animals became warm-blooded in a new environment. Warm-blooded nature gave them independence from the environment, and the advantages for them was to possess the I, phenomenal sensations and consciousness. Now you are an individual who is not determined by the environment. You can do what you want. You can fly, swim, walk wherever you want. There is a new type of attitude towards oneself. Warm-bloodedness also accelerated the processes in the brain several times. Very interesting. I've studied ants for a number of years myself for my research, and I have a few videos about ants, for example, and we know about bees. So they have consciousness. I am sure we can talk more about this in the future, but this is a fascinating subject. And I'll do more videos on this from different angles, so to say. Because before we think how to communicate with alien beings from other planets, we have to establish what is consciousness on our planet. That's my opinion. If you like my research, please help me through the links you'll find in the description to this video. Please subscribe to my channel, and if you can help me, you'll find how to do it in the links in the description to this video, and thank you for your attention to my work. Stay tuned for more videos on a number of subjects, paranormal and not. It's a big planet out there, and it's a very interesting planet.